Disco Bloodbath. So I've got Lily, I've got Ryan on Disco Bloodbath. I like Disco Bloodbath, it's a good map. Lily playing Protoss on the left of the map here, Ryan as the Terran on the right. So what do we know about Disco Bloodbath? We know that you get your second and it's a pretty narrow ramp into the second, very easy to defend. The third is a little more open with these sort of attack paths coming in and the destructible rocks. You could, I suppose, build the third over here, and that is arguably slightly easier to hold, but it's up to you really. It's not a terribly big map. It's sort of medium-sized, really. It's not especially big, not especially small. You certainly can rush on this map. It's not so far away that you can't get up in your opponent's base. It's a similar distance by air as it is by ground. There aren't sort of convoluted paths that ground units have to take. So yeah, a variety of possibilities on this map, I feel. So Lily gets in for the scout first. The worker going to come in and have a look around. Standard form here is to annoy the Terran by attacking the worker that's building something. That's something you can only do against Terran. Obviously Protoss workers don't have to stay with the construction, they just plant it and leave. It's only Terran workers that the worker has to continue to build, so you can be really annoying and just attack the worker, and the Terran's forced to pull another SCV to defend. Yeah, in Lily's side of the map, Lily drops the gateway on the top of the ramp and everything's looking pretty normal here. This guy up here, don't know what that's about. I wondered if at first, he's hiding here. If you look at the way these things work, they block vision. So another unit right here wouldn't be able to see this one, and vice versa. So you can kind of hide stuff in this position. But it's a bit of a curious location. I'm not sure what that worker is going to be doing. What do we know? We know that everything looks pretty normal for Lily. She's got this pretty early expand, and I like that. Nothing wrong with that. You've got a standard wall going on. We've got Zealot is going to come out and fill this gap. Against Terran, not so much. I mean, against Zerg, very normal to put a Zealot in the gap. It looks like she did manage to kill that SCV by grabbing it with her workers. It's pretty normal to put a Zealot in the gap against Zerg because Lings are the things that are going to try and get into your base, and the Zealot will trade well with those. Against Terran, I don't know about a Zealot in the gap, because if Marines come up, they're going to shoot the Zealot. If a Reaper comes up, it gets in anyway. So maybe an Adept is the better choice as your first unit against the Terran. No matter. So Ryan also has got an expo. Has got this one gas up, but only one worker in it. And with no add-on and no sign of tech coming down, I'm not sure what he has planned for that gas. So Marines being built here, but it's hard to tell just yet what type of tech path we're going to see. Lily, meanwhile, Robo and Twilight. In general, as a Protoss player, this early in the game, you tend to go one or the other. You tend to go for a Robo build, which means you're going to get Immortals out to support your gateway units, and you're going to get across the map. Or you go Twilight, which means you're going to get upgrades for those gateway units. I mean, by any sort of later stage in the game, you'll certainly have both. But yeah, I'm just kind of curious about the tech path really. So it's at present unclear. We've kind of got one of everything. The Stargate coming down as well. Early Observer coming out before the Immortal, and I don't mind that at all. I quite like getting an Observer out nice and early, send it across the map. Observers give you vision, but they are completely cloaked, so you can fly an Observer into your opponent's base, have a good old nose around, and frequently you can leave it in there. And to be honest, until you're playing at, even at Platinum, you can quite often get away with just parking an Observer in your opponent's base and they never see it for the whole game, and you always know what they're doing, which is fantastic. So there's the observer come in, and if we were to look from the point of view once it gets over here from Ryan, you'll see that it is possible to notice them. It's possible to see that the observer is there, but it is tricky to spot. They're like the cloaked units appear as like little ripples on the map. So nothing coming out of the Stargate just yet. A forge going down as well. I'm not sure I like the building positioning. You know, if a bunch of Marines suddenly appear, enough to snipe these two units, everything's like clustered together. You snipe these two pylons, it's all a bit miserable. So I don't know about that. But in the main, we've got several more gateways. So it does look like, with charge being researched as well, that it is going to be a gateway heavy army with a lot of zealots and those types of things. Ryan, meanwhile, is upgrading combat shield, and I'm all for that. Combat shield from the tech lab here. Look, there's this observer. If we look from Ryan's point of view, you see the ripple just crossing the map. That is what you get to see, this little shadow. If you suspect there's an observer, frequently scrolling your view around like that is the only way to spot it. Now, at sort of higher levels, people know that there are certain backgrounds that make observers harder to spot. You know, so you can kind of put an observer somewhere. Oh, it's actually just out of range there. You can park observers above certain things that make them really tricky to spot. You know, an observer directly above this gas and stuff like that is really hard to see. But anyway, that's all pretty high level stuff. At our kind of level, it's frequently the case that people just don't see observers. So I was talking about combat shield, excellent upgrade, and it should definitely be at or near the top of your list if you're playing Terran. You know, you're always going to have some Marines. It's a cheap upgrade. Why wouldn't you get it? It just makes such a big difference to how tough your Marines are. Siege tank comes out as well, and siege tanks, superb units, excellent for defense of your base, and a pretty standard style for Terrans is just Marine tank. It's kind of all you need. Marines are very versatile units. They're able to shoot up, they have a high DPS, they're very cheap, and they don't cost any gas. So, you know, building a large number of Marines is a pretty effective way to play as Terran, and there's been plenty of pro players even that, you know, like Marine King, for example, that pretty much all they do is build Marines all game, back those up with medevacs, back them up with a few siege tanks, and you've got a very, very powerful army. If you are going to play that sort of style, the thing to look out for, Marines only cost minerals and they are cheap, so you're likely to end up with a big old mineral bank. You need a lot of barracks to play that style. I mean, a lot of barracks. You know, don't be shy about the number of barracks you're throwing down. Feel free to have sort of 5-6 barracks per command center. So if you're mining off 3 bases, yes, we are talking about 15 racks to crank out Marines 15 at a time. And you can sort of flood your opponent with that many Marines. Look at the production tab here. Lily is busy all over the place. There is a Dark Shrine being built. There are 3 forges, so we're simultaneously getting shields, armor, and attack. I don't know. That's all pretty crazy. You know, there are loads of Stargates. So it's still fairly difficult to tell exactly what we're going to see coming out here. What are these going down? We've got the fleet beacon, we've got another robo, and I'm not sure about this. You know, choose a tech path and probably go for that. You're getting all these upgrades for ground, so you know, why all the Stargates? If you are going to be building a fleet, well then why all these upgrades for ground? It doesn't really make sense. Your money is better spent on units. You know, arguably you're better building loads of 1 or 2 types of units, because it's more efficient in terms of you have to spend less on these production facilities and these tech structures. But anyway, Lily also has the 2 side cores, and so is getting air upgrades 2 at a time as well. Let's have a quick look at the income tab, and you can see that Lily with the 3rd base mining well is ahead, and that's kind of unusual because against Terran you normally would have mules to contend with. So, you know, on an even number of bases, Terran tends to have the higher income. But Ryan, perhaps unfamiliar with the mules, you need orbital commands like this one to drop mules. Oh, what? Yeah, I thought I'd just heard a mule be dropped. but no, obviously not. You need orbital commands to be able to drop mules, and orbital commands are fantastic. You should always have orbital commands as Terran. So this turret actually gives sight of the observer here, because turrets are detectors and this marine is able to pick it off. So no more spying for Lily. I strongly suspect Lily doesn't know about this base up in the top right. And I quite like a ninja base. There's nothing wrong with throwing down a ninja. Frequently you can get away with it. It means your opponent doesn't realize that your income's as high as it is, and you can get away with mining for free, in terms of you haven't built any static defense to defend this or anything like that. You're just relying on it going undiscovered. Where is that scan? I'm not sure. There we go. So the scan from Ryan in the main base sees these 3 Stargates and the 1 Void Ray. I'd be a bit confused if I dropped that scan, because you see the 3 Stargates but you don't see anything in production from them, and that's a bit weird. And you know, why is that? Because Lily is not short of money, so why is there nothing in production from these? I don't know. It doesn't look like the gateways are on cooldown either, so not really sure what Lily's plan is with that. Yeah, so I was saying this is an awesome thing, having the ninja base, but do saturate these mineral fields, you know, build workers up here. Don't know about building tech structures over here. That's just an odd place for them. You know, units are going to come out of here, and it's a long walk for them to meet up with your army. So I'm not sure about spreading tech structures out in that way. So a reasonably powerful army on both sides here. If we look at the army supplies, they're not crazy different, but given that most of Ryan's army is Marine, and Marines are just not as hard and tough as Protoss units. If I look at the army value tab, it's actually pretty similar. More gas invested in the Protoss army, so it's a slightly higher tech army, but make no mistake, this is a powerful Terran force. These Marines, was Stim upgraded? No, hasn't been yet. So I'd like to see Stim, but more importantly than that, I'd love to see some medevacs, because you know, medevacs change Marines completely. A few medevacs above these Marines just make them so much more effective. But these siege tanks, you know, there's a lot of siege tanks here, and they can just deal so much damage. Oh, that's a thing I was going to mention. Orbital commands, in addition to being able to drop mules, if you find yourself supply blocked, you can drop extra supply onto your supply depots, and that can have a very that can just instantly get you out of that supply block. So it's a very useful little trick. Okay, here comes this extremely unusual Protoss army. We've got sort of a bit of everything in this. We've got Stalkers, we've even got DTs, we've got Zealots, Colossus, Void Ray, you know, even a carrier, 2 carriers thrown into the mix. So this is not an army that you see every day. If these tanks were sieged up, I, to be honest, would really fancy the Terran making a fairly easy hold here, because those tanks will obliterate everything on the ground. Thors do well against air. They do splash damage by default to stuff in the air. You know, so these extra stuff coming in, these are, you know, I know that was only 3 more units, 2 Tempests and a Colossus, but make no mistake, those are punchy units. Those are tier 3 units. So 2 Tempests and a Colossus adds quite a little bit of punch to this army. So army supplies, very similar. It will depend on how this engagement goes down. These Marines are all kind of standing in, I don't know, with a lot of units over here. The way the Terran army is spread, it isn't necessarily set up fantastically defensively. What the Terran does not want to do is rush down this ramp into these Colossus. What the Terran does want to do is have these tanks sieged up. Don't rush into a position where the Colossus can splash you. Oh no, oh that's horrible. So the DTs are going ham. Ryan doesn't know about them. The Colossus are just going to destroy all of this. And look, the heavy hitters, these siege tanks that everybody knows are broken, are so far away, they're doing nothing. None of these siege tanks have fired a shot yet. They needed to be sieged up where they were. Oh, it's just not nice. It's not nice. It was a piecemeal sort of file in from the Terran, and that is horrible to watch. These DTs have done incredibly well because I don't believe Ryan actually knew they were there. There's one, 11 kills, 6 kills, 6 kills, 4 kills. That is an awful lot of kills from just those handful of units, and that's because they're permanently cloaked. Ryan just didn't even know they were there, so huge amounts of damage being done, and that's a shame. The way that battle went did not reflect the power of the Terran army that was there. That Terran army certainly could have held that attack had the engagement gone a bit better. So things to look out for. Colossus do huge amount of splash damage. The last thing you want is your Marines standing still within range of Colossus. So what you want to do is run back, force the Colossus to pull forward, and then run forward and focus down those Colossus. The siege tanks needed to be sieged up on the high ground, and in the end, because of the building placement, they were trying to come around the back here in some sort of horrible fashion. The Thors needed to be microed a little bit. You needed to be telling the Thors to focus down these air units. By default, I think they do favour shooting air over ground units, but these siege tanks that have come out all the way up here, that was always a weird thing. They're just going to drive to their death, and now look, the Protoss army is absolutely mighty with these tier 3 units making their way across the map. Excuse me. So this game's thoroughly over. It's pretty much impossible to see a way that Ryan can get back into this. Look at this. Look at the supply. 23 supply to 193. There's no way. And look, these tanks are still just there on, I don't know, like a funny rally point or something. They're just going to park there. That's hilarious. Just hello, don't mind me. And they're going to die pretty quickly to these carriers and stuff. So yeah, I don't know. In terms of defensive placements, you need your Marines to be able to attack all simultaneously. You don't want them to be funneling through chokes past buildings and stuff. You want to be able to get a nice concave, a nice arc of Marines that can shoot things. You need your siege tanks in sieged up positions so that they're doing that splash damage, because they do an awful lot of damage to siege tanks. They're very, very powerful units. And as I say, microing those Thors, microing the Marines a little bit, pulling them back, luring those heavy hit splash units like the Colossus forward so that you can then focus them down. This planetary is going to be hard to kill with the SCVs repairing it, but eventually it is going to fall. So yeah, I think we're just waiting for a GG here. Look, this Protoss army continues to stream in. There's nothing that isn't tier 3 left in the Protoss, I suppose Void Rays, but anyway, there is the GG.